there's a lot of discussion going around about women's expectations in dating. So I wanted to ask the question, are women's expectations for dating too high? So let's start by watching a clip of Chantel from 90 Day Fiancé and see what she has to say about the topic.
And the producers contacted me about the show. They said, we want to find your next partner. Tell me what kind of person you're looking for. My list was very long.
What was on your list?
Let me see if I can find it. You want me to find the list?
I know, yeah.
Let's see. Passionate about traveling and treats me to vacations. Physically attractive, tall with a fit body, strong arms, and broad shoulders. Preferably educated, open-minded, and supportive of LGBTQ community and causes like Black Lives Matter. Demonstrates commitment by putting our relationship first. Loves Jesus. Has maybe a profession like medical sales, doctor, lawyer, finance. Fingernails that are filed and fit body. And it goes on.
All right, so I wanted to touch on some of the stuff on the list. So passionate about traveling. So we definitely saw this on dating apps a few years ago where, college-educated women that are, are career-driven, there's a large emphasis on travel, like, go out there and see the world. I want to point out, like, one thing we don't see on the list is the notion of, getting married, having children, and building a lifelong, like, partnership with somebody. That's just kind of doesn't appear on her list here. But what does appear is the notion of he's got to be really attractive. He has to make a lot of money, and he has to treat her like to vacations, which was her second point. So the idea of treating her to vacations, and there's a certain degree of entitlement of like, I deserve to be treated well, and I deserve to be treated like to these vacations, and you better make enough money to kind of lavish me with this stuff. So yeah, asking people in the comments, like, is that too high of an expectation? The next one was tall with a fit body. So, I know that this is a controversial one because a lot of men out there feel that women will have this requirement that men be 6 feet tall or above, and most men don't fit into that, statistically. So that to me would raise an eyebrow as to maybe her expectations are too high. One of the things on the list is being supportive of the LGBTQ community, and then being supportive of Black Lives Matter. So presumably she would also say like the women's movement. So I wanted to touch on that because there's a lot of political division in our society, and I think women have very much skewed more left-leaning. And now we're seeing a large-scale political movement of men leaving the Democratic Party and going right. And there's a lot of discussion about that. The social justice movement is kind of the culmination of three different kind of spearheads, right? The LGBTQ movement, women's movement, and Black Lives Matter. And those movements have kind of coalesced and kind of like locked arms and is like marching off down the yellow brick road into this kind of perceived utopia, right? Like, we're tackling bigotry, homophobia, sexism, racism, and this is collectively, we are labeling this unilaterally as good. And if anybody has any sort of dissenting opinion, it's la 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 la. We don't want to hear that. If anybody has any sort of criticism, they're bad, right? Because we have associated this with being morally right. We are, future is female. We're tackling oppression of women. We're tackling oppression, gay, good. How could you perceive this in any other way? And we're tackling systematic racism. And so any sort of pushback on it, we become so politically divided where we can't have conversations, we can't have a nuanced opinion. With the LGBTQ issues, my kid came home from school one day and said, "Hey, Dad, look, they asked us in class like to raise our hands if we thought that boys can be girls and girls can be boys in relation to transitioning and stuff like that." And inherently, I felt my son was upset, and I was very upset as his parent to realize that teachers are pushing this gender ideology within his school, which I don't really feel is settled science. I think we're reacting to something that's very new within the last decade in terms of gender ideology. And not only that, but you're putting children in the class on the spot and being, under massive amount of social pressure, seeing who's supportive of this and who is not. And if you're not supportive of it, then now all of a sudden is there going to be, peer pressure and tension and resentment towards you for not being in support of this thing, right? Not only that, again, it's a nuanced topic and you're asking children to weigh in on it. Aside from that, I'd gone through a pride event in this at one point, and I saw drag queens dressed in very provocative outfits, dancing very suggestively, in a very lewd manner, making lewd jokes, and children were at this event and they were encouraged to walk up to the drag queen and put dollar bills into the waistband of these drag queens. And in my head, I'm thinking like, what if this was like, what if this was a woman dressed in basically nothing but like a thong bikini, and she's gyrating in front of a bunch of kids? Would that be appropriate for kids to walk up and be encouraged to put dollar bills into her thong? And that effectively, no, I would say no. I think most people would say no, but because it's a drag queen, that's a man dressed as a woman, dressed in virtually nothing, out there shaking his stuff, that's considered decent and correct. So, at the very least, I think there's a lot of things that we can look at and say, that would raise an eyebrow, or people would push back, and we'd want to have discussions on this. What is appropriate? But I think because this movement has been so aggressive in terms of no, we're on the right side of history. We're right. It's good. It's good. If you don't agree with it, we're wrong. We're not going to listen to anything. Again, it's been walking into an echo chamber, closing the door behind us, and padlocking it. And anybody on the outside must be some sort of extremist or something like that. So. And in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement, right? Like the Black Lives Matter movement had a massive, scandal with corruption at the highest ranks, where people were using a lot of the donated money that presumably was going to help the lives of people of color throughout the country. And that a lot of that money went to buying mansions for the people at the upper echelon of that organization. So So if you say, do you support Black Lives Matter? It's like, well, that's a nuanced thing as well. And you can also say, okay, well, foundationally, our country, America, we have a very core principle, which is, and it's part of the law. You do not discriminate in hiring practices based on somebody's race. It's a merit-based system, and that's part of why we have enjoyed success in our country in the past. And so inherently, we do not take race as a factor in hiring practices. But then when we see this massive, highly successful push for diversity, equity, inclusion within companies, and that adoption of these ideals, we see a prioritization of race being part of the hiring practices. These two things, I think a lot of people have viewed that as, hey, this is very shaky ground. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of philosophical, logical, contradictions here. So how do we rectify that? But again, I think that people that are for it, that feel like, hey, we're solving the world's problems, and we're crushing systemic oppression, and we're paving the future. They don't want to hear any sort of criticism. It's just, and that kind of cuts to the heart of the matter. If you are in opposition to any of these social justice movements, you are immediately categorized as, well, you must be a bigot or a sexist or a racist, misogynist, whatever it is. So for me, when we're talking about what women's expectations are, what's on that woman's list of what she really needs in a partner, and you're seeing these things on there that are effectively exclusionary of a lot of people who have a nuanced opinion, I think that can be very very frustrating, and I think it shows a lot of reasons why a lot of there's a new kind of trend of men kind of masking their political opinions in order to get with women, because women have this very staunch, you must support LGBTQ, you must support Black Lives Matter, and if you don't, go kick rocks. So for me, I would advocate, I just think, we need to have more productive discussions about nuance, and we need to be able to listen to what other people say. I think we can meet in the middle on a lot of things, but people take very hard stances. It's you're either for this, which I'm labeling as inherently good, or you're against it. Which are you going to be, buddy? You can't sit on the fence. And it's like, well, for me, there's a lot more nuance to things. And it's the unfortunate casualty of all of this is that men and women are just not getting together, because we're living in these separate, distinct echo chambers, and feeling like we just want to throw rocks at the other, over the fence at the other people. All right. So to round out the list, she demonstrates commitment by putting our relationship first. I think that's a really good one to have on a list, but I also think it's quite humorous, because it's like number 10, and above that, she's got take me on trips, and you must be tall and have broad shoulders. She says loves Jesus. I really want to ask people, to comment down below, like, do you feel that being a Christian and being, loving Jesus has any conflict with the idea of being like very much pro, like the LGBTQ like movement? I'd love to hear your opinion on that. And then works in a respected profession, so doctor, lawyer, finance. So that that's highly educated and makes a lot of money. That's like what I view that last bullet point as. So just to kind of recap, tall, Christian, very big on social justice, makes a lot of money, and is willing to lavish her with trips. That's how I would typify her list. So yeah, just to ask the question broadly again, do we feel that, is this typical? This woman is obviously a reality show star. She's not. Would she be considered a typical woman? And then also, just broadly, do people out there feel that women have unrealistic standards? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. So, if you like this video, please like and subscribe. See you in the next one.